Greetings, everybody. I received our Allstate auto insurance renewal papers in the mail, and I noticed my brother was listed as an excluded driver. Now, granted, he doesn't live anywhere near us and doesn't drive our vehicles, but I wondered what that meant exactly, that he's excluded from the policy, and if we could remove him from the excluded list without actually adding him to the policy. Because if we were to add him to the policy, our monthly payments would be much costlier. I spoke with an Allstate representative in person and she said this: if an excluded driver gets in an accident driving one of our vehicles, Allstate will not help pay the expenses. This is important because anybody else who happens to be driving one of our cars, anybody who isn't in the excluded drivers list, would be covered for the first accident, even though they aren't on our policy. For example, let's say for whatever reason, or in an emergency where I needed to go to the hospital and I couldn't drive myself, if I had a neighbor or a friend drive my car and there was an accident on the way there, Allstate would cover or help cover the costs, even though that person isn't on our policy. But if it was my brother driving, him being specifically listed as an excluded driver, Allstate wouldn't help cover. So my next question was, why would we specifically have listed that he should be excluded? The Allstate rep did some searching and said that some years ago, my parents' policy reached the point where, for whatever reason, Allstate specifically wanted them to decide whether or not to include or to exclude my brother. And since, as I said, he lives far away and doesn't drive our vehicles, they excluded him. I asked, can we remove him from the excluded list? And she said, the only way to remove him from excluded is to actually include him in the policy, which would raise the rates because of the extra driver. Now, of course, I hope we never have to worry about him getting in an accident with one of our vehicles, but I was just curious for the sake of knowing the worst case scenario. And for those of you out there who noticed some excluded drivers on your policy, or if you're being asked about excluding people, I thought this video might help a little bit in understanding what it means and whether or not the excluded drivers would be covered in a one-time accident. Again, excluded drivers are not covered at all, but supposedly anybody else who's driving your car, even if they're not on your policy, they would be covered for the first accident.